So we're on the Z build. Um, we're about a year and a half in, and we came to the tragic conclusion that the motor that the guy gave me with the at the beginning of the project is blown or just shot. Something in it is horribly wrong. And there really is going to be no fixing unless I want to try and turbo it. Unfortunately, that's way out of our budget. So to take it was way out of our budget to take a gamble on an engine that is probably internally wrong, fucked. So we were gonna do the KA-24 single overhead cam because I had the engine for free from a truck. So we're using that. Basically, I'll go over all the electrical for starters, so we can get the engine to run outside of the chassis. Once it runs outside of the chassis, I know I can worry about mounting it up, transmission, drivetrain, all that. So if you're trying to swap to the KA in any chassis, I can go over all the amperages you need for all of your fuses. Basically, you just need a fuse box, relay box, toggle switches, or you could hook it up to your keyed ignition. But either way you want to do it, I have a schematic for all the gauge wire and everything you need. So we'll go over that first, go over all the components, how to power all of them up. Once you have that, you should be able to run the engine outside of the chassis that it comes in. And once you know that, you can go forward with figuring out mounting, fitment, and all that, and then actually driving it for finally. So for the electrical on this KA swap, we got, instead of the D21's harness, because it ended up being a disaster, we got the 240SX wiring loom for the KA-24, and it's a single overhead cam. So there's not that much support for everything. So basically, I still need to buy the ECU. Once we have a 240 ECU, 240 loom, and we get power of that loom, everything's going to work together. So knowing that what you're using is going to work together is kind of the most essential part of this. Once you know that, okay, this works together, then you can worry about, okay, let's get our fuse box, let's get our relays, let's get buttons if you need them, or toggle switches, and then from there it's, am I using the right wires? Are they the right amperage between the components? So my ECU specifically is 15 amp draw. So I pop a 15 amp fuse in my circuit breaker, in my fuse box, I mean. And from there, I have a toggle switch that's going to toggle on the ECU power. So the toggle switch sends a signal to the relay, and the relay connects battery through a 15 amp fuse into my ECU. The ECU is grounded to the battery, and my relay is grounded to relay ground, which it's all grounded to the battery or the chassis, basically. And once you have that completes your ECU power and all that, you should be getting power to your loom. You should be getting power to your ECU. If you turn it to diagnostic mode, there's little LED lights that will tell you if it's actually functioning or not. You need to know if that's functioning. So if it's not, you did something wrong. You could have bad relay you're using, your wiring's just wrong. And if you don't fix that, you can burn out your ECU. You can have a lot of problems. I personally don't actually add power to any circuit that I'm working on until after I know and I've gone over it a couple times. That way I know I'm not gonna accidentally burn something out if I connect the wrong cables together, or even if you're just touching around with the shit, you don't want to get shocked. So don't add power till you're absolutely sure. I was able to take the relay box out of the D21, clean it up, pop the old relays out of it, as they were disgusting. These were the old holders for the relays. And now this is my new relay box, and it's labeled, ECU, fuel, and start. And those are the only relays I really needed. But I popped an extra one in there in case I, in the future, want to add something that requires a relay. And now I just have to wire everything together in my Z. So that's pretty much where I'm at with the build. I'm going to continue on with that, but for now, yeah, you just do that for each component. So the 15 amp fuse on the ECU power from the switch, pretty simple. And then you just do that for your fuel pump. So your fuel pump is 10 amps, and you run a 10 amp fuse through the relay, and the relay gets triggered by your toggle switch, and you just rinse and repeat that for all of them. So really you just need, in my instance, ECU, fuel, and a starter. And you do want to add a fuse onto your toggle switch that's distributing power. I'm running my switches in parallel. So if you wire it in parallel, you want to add the 20 amp fuse off of the fuse box that will run into your first power fuse, your power toggle switch. So I have a switch that turns on power to the box essentially, and then from there I know, okay, now if I flick ECU, fuel, and starter, that all these things are going to turn on. So you basically have like a power switch for your box. That's I just put that in there. That was 20 amp. That's what it was rated for, so I put a 20 amp on there. And after that, you ground your components, you ground your fuse box, and you give power to it. You want to go over it twice, make sure you get everything good, and then after that, you should have a running engine outside of the chassis of the vehicle. Once you have that, you know, okay, I can now set this in my vehicle, whatever you're trying to swap it into, and basically it's just about making things fit and making things work together. So your flywheel should be able to mate up to, or not flywheel, but your engine should be able to mate up with your transmission at that point. And you want to make sure it's going to mount in a position where it can do that. Transmission's got to connect properly to your drive shaft, which is going to connect you to your differential. Differential is going to connect you to your axle. Your axle is going to connect your wheels to the power, so you'll have rear wheel drive. Everything in that system, once you start surpassing a certain power level, needs to be upgraded. So it's best to not have to do that if you're trying to save money. So I'm going to max out my power around 300 to 400 horsepower. Don't want to exceed that. One, because you're like destroying all your components if you're surpassing this with an inline four. And two, because that costs a shitload of money, and there's no point for what I'm trying to do. I want to be able to drive it on the street, and you'll come to realize you can't drive a 500 horsepower car down the street casually, and you can't drive 1,000 horsepower down the street casually. It's just not enjoyable. It is fun, but it's not a daily driver. That's just insane. Yeah, all these things I'm going through for the first time, really. So keeping it all documented so that if somebody's trying to do a KA-24 single overhead cam swap to anything, they will be able to do it without, guessing. Because the electrical is done, we're pulling that engine out. I'm gonna start that whole build. That will be a whole separate episode. Once that thing's built out and it's ready to actually go into the Z, we'll start it up outside the Z, make sure that all works. So I'll do a video on that, how you would start your motor outside of the chassis. And then from there you can weld up some mounts, get it in there, fit it all up. fucking weld that bitch on there, and fucking send it. After that, you should be able to drive it down the street. So anybody who's trying to swap to a KA, this is the fucking channel you want to watch, because I'm going to explain everything.